Before you were old enough to have an opinion about your life, someone had already started writing it for you. Not with a pen, but with expectations, with traditions, stories, with invisible rules about what a successful life should look like. Go to school, get good grades, go to university, build a career, get married, buy a home, have children, retire, and eventually leave. And somewhere along the way, this sequence became so normal that we stopped asking who decided that this was the definition of good life. Because perhaps the strangest thing about the human experience is this: we spend decades trying to achieve a life we never consciously chose. And then one day we wake up and ask, why doesn't this feel like it's mine? Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode with me, your host, Ani, where we never take the obvious answer seriously. Most people don't feel trapped because someone physically forced them. They feel trapped because the path was presented as obvious. Nobody had to say, you must live this way. They simply showed you thousands of examples of people living this way: the happy family, the successful professional, the beautiful wedding, the perfect home, the retirement dream. And slowly, without realizing it, the image becomes the goal. Not because you examined it, because you absorbed it. The same way we absorb language, the same way we absorb beliefs, the life script becomes invisible precisely because everyone around us is following it. Now, this doesn't mean that this script came from one person sitting in a room deciding how everyone should live. I think reality is way more complicated than that. The modern life script developed through centuries of social, economic, and cultural changes. For example, the Industrial Revolution changed the way humans organized their lives. People moved from agricultural communities into cities. Work became separate from home. Time became measured by productivity. Education system developed to prepare people for specific roles in a society. Economic systems needed stability. Governments needed organized citizens, and families needed structure that supported survival. And over generations, those systems created a very specific image of adulthood: a productive person, stable person, a successful person. But somewhere along the way, we began confusing what creates stable society with what creates a fulfilled human being. And those two things are not always the same. One of the most powerful parts of this life script is the timeline, because the script doesn't only tell you what to do, it tells you when to do it. For example, by 25, you should know your career. By 30, you should be settled. By 35, you should have a family. When you're 40, you should have achieved something substantial. And if your life doesn't match this timeline, you don't simply think, my path is different. You start to think something is wrong with me. And this is where the script becomes painful, because a person can be perfectly on time according to their own journey, but completely behind according to the society's clock. Think about someone who is 35 and single. Why do we immediately assume that something is missing from their life? Why don't we ask, is this person happy? Is this person fulfilled? Are they building a life that they actually want? Instead, we ask, when will you settle down? As if life is a train scheduled and they missed their stop. There is a question nobody likes asking. What happens when you get everything you were told would make you happy and you still feel empty? Because these people exist: the person with the degree, with the career, marriage, house, children, beautiful photos, the life everyone congratulates them for. And yet privately they think Is this it? And perhaps the reason this conversation is very uncomfortable because it challenges one of our deepest assumptions that achievement automatically creates fulfillment. But what if you achieved the right thing for the wrong person? What if you built a beautiful life, but it was built around a version of yourself you no longer recognize? The life script always existed, but social media gave it a stage. Now we don't just live our lives, we display evidence that we are living it correctly. The engagement announcement, the wedding photos, the pregnancy announcement, the new job, the new house, the luxury vacation. And there's nothing wrong with celebrating these things. But the thing is that we start comparing our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reels. And suddenly, someone else's milestone becomes evidence that we're failing. Someone gets married, we feel behind. Someone has a baby, we question ourselves. Someone gets promoted, we wonder if we're doing enough. But perhaps the problem was never your life. Perhaps the problem was measuring your life using someone else's timeline. And to be honest, I think that the most interesting people are often the ones who step outside the expected path. The person who doesn't want children, the person who changes career at 40, the person who leaves a prestigious job, the person who chooses a different kind of relationship, a person who moves somewhere unexpected. And often society doesn't know what to do with these people because someone choosing a different path forces everyone else to question theirs. Sometimes the reaction isn't, I'm worried about you. Sometimes it is, why would you do that? But underneath that question, maybe another one. What if there is more than one way to live? And that, for most of the people, is scary. And you know what's interesting? I think most of us are living two lives at the same time. There's the life everyone else can see, and there's a life that only we experience. The outside life is easy to measure. People can see your job, your salary, degree, relationship, whether you're married, you own a house, whatever, children, whether you have made it, so to say. And because those things are visible, we naturally assume that there are things that matter the most. But nobody can see your inner life. Nobody sees whether you wake up excited to live your day. Nobody knows whether you feel lonely in a room full of people. Nobody knows if you've spent years building a life that impresses everyone else while quietly wondering why it doesn't feel like yours. And I think that that's one of the biggest traps we fall into. We spend so much time asking, how does my life look like? That we forget to ask, how does my life actually feel? Because those are two completely different questions. I've met people who look incredibly successful from the outside, amazing careers, beautiful homes, great relationships, everything you would point and say, they've got it all. And yet, if you sat down with them long enough, they'll eventually say, I don't know, I just feel empty. Or I should be happy, but I'm not. And then I've met people whose lives made absolutely no sense on paper. They left prestigious jobs, they got married late, they moved across the world with no plans, they started over at 40, and somehow they feel more alive than anyone else in the room. And I think maybe that's because they stopped asking what will people think and started asking what actually feels true for me. I honestly think one of the saddest things that can happen isn't failing. It's becoming incredibly successful at building a life that never really belonged to you. Imagine spending 30 years climbing a mountain only to get to the top and realize it wasn't even your mountain. You were just climbing the one everyone else told you was worth climbing. So please allow me to ask you something. And I really want you to sit with this. Imagine that just for a moment, nobody was watching. Your parents gone, society's expectations gone, social media comparison. Nobody was going to congratulate you for anything. Nobody was going to judge you. Nobody was going to be disappointed. It was just you. Now, what would your life actually look like? Would you still be doing the same job? Would you still be chasing the same promotion? Would you still be in the same relationship? Would you still want that marriage? Would you still honestly want children? Would you be living in the city country that you live in? Or would your life begin to look completely different? Because here's something I find fascinating. A lot of us don't actually ask ourselves what we want. We ask ourselves what makes sense or what is expected or what people our age are doing or what will make your parents proud or what will make us look successful. But that's completely different question. Maybe the better question is, what would I choose if nobody was keeping score? Because I don't think most people are afraid of making the wrong decision. I think they're afraid of making the right decision and having everyone else misunderstand it. And maybe that is why it's so difficult to step outside the script, not because we don't know what we want, but because choosing it might disappoint the people we love. And that's painful. But maybe the bigger tragedy is disappointing yourself for the next 40 years. Maybe this should be the question. When I look at the life I'm building, can I honestly say I chose this? Because if the answer is yes, even if your life looks completely different from everyone else's, you're probably much freer than you realize. So, my lovelies, maybe the goal was never to escape the script completely, because every human being needs some structure. The question is not, do I have a script? The question is, did I choose it? Because there is a difference between living a life that was handed to you and consciously choosing a life that feels like yours. And perhaps freedom is not destroying everything you inherited. Perhaps freedom is simply becoming aware enough to ask, is this my dream or was I taught to dream it? So, my lovelies, I want to thank you for your precious presence and for staying with me until the end of this episode. If this message resonated with you, share your thoughts with me in the comment section. I read everything. And until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and always go beyond the mind.